Uh-oh. Which one's going? Double stream. What's happening? Don't know. Good morning. Let's make sure my audio is actually on. Yeah, it is. Good morning. Kevin. That's a cool name. So, pretty big drop pre-market for IWM. This is going to be the first time we've had a major pullback. So, on this move, really nothing has kind of moved to new lows. So, this is an engulfing candle here on the previous 4-hour candle. It won't be like set in stone until the market opens. There's a lot of selling going on here, but we'll see what that does to indicators across the board. I mean, I don't feel like surprised at all that IWM came back down. I mean, this is not, I don't know. I probably deleted it yesterday, but this is kind of what I was thinking might happen, that we might get like a final move up and then drop. It's not a, it's really not at all unusual here, because this has had almost no major pullbacks. So at this point, it's debatable, but I'd say that this is probably just a channel. You might consider it more of like a widening. I'm okay with whatever. If you want to call it a widening, that's fine. It does have a slight widening to it, but in regular trading hours, it pretty much stayed almost like a channel. So anyways, it makes sense to me. Basically hit the higher targets here. We'll see what happens. You never know. I'm thinking that it either propels the market really far, or it's a way to kind of crush the buying. Like we buy back up to the gap, or kind of get close to it, and then maybe come back down. Finally start like an actual pullback, like a retracement, because this has been going like hard, huge run. I mean, historic run, because like we mentioned, this has never been on the 4-hour. It's never been that overbought, at least in the last like 10 years, maybe more. I think I went back to like as far as I could. I don't think I couldn't find a single spot on the 4-hour extended chart where this was more overbought, which is kind of amazing if you think about it. Like you just witnessed like a historical move, for IWM. So, there's not really a precedent for it, but I would say that on the whole, common sense sort of rules the game, and common sense would say that there needs to be a little bit of a cool down. I've been talking about coming back to 210, and now I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, that is kind of the golden pocket. So I know that's far, but it makes sense on the big picture. When you look back at the like the previous tops here, they were up there at like 210. We just never really checked them. We kind of gapped through them. So this is pretty close to what I thought might happen. And yeah, now it's like a golden pocket. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it goes a little higher before anything else, but hard to say. I think the big disappointment today will be GameStop, at least for some. My biggest concern is that it's not going to replicate the move in like regular trading hours, because this is like technically, if you look at the chart, in the extended trading hours, this held like that curve. And I hate to say it, but that might have been that push up, you know? I mean, it didn't quite get to 30. I think got like pennies away, 2 pennies away or something ridiculous. But no, 1 penny away. They just refused to let it go any farther. Yeah, and I hate to say it, but this is kind of what I thought might happen during regular trading hours. And if it happens to be that this happened as an extension in just after hours, then kind of stinks, but we might just miss out on that move. Really hope it doesn't happen. But you never know. In the grand scheme of things, it's really only down like a few cents, so anything can happen, you know. We could still see that pop. And frankly, again, like during regular trading hours, it doesn't really look like anything's broken yet. So we still got a chance here. I don't want to like kill everybody's hopes and dreams this morning, but it's just one of those things, you know. We'll just wait it out and see what happens. I'm optimistic because, yeah, again, I don't think even in extended trading hours, I don't think it hit that marker. So it would be strange to me to like only do it in extended trading hours and like push up and then basically from that point forward be done, I guess, because like didn't hit the actual creek, which is strange. So I don't know. We'll see. The post going around about GME, apparently a guy knows exactly how much GME was shorted. He's expecting to hit 67 today. Hey man, I'll take 67. Yeah, I saw that, the prophecy. The prophecy, that's what they called it. Richard Newton's funny, dude. He kept saying like the prophecy, and I was like, what are you talking about? That's some Old Testament stuff, man. He's like, there's a prophecy going around. I'm like, what are you guys doing? No wonder people think this is like a cult, you know? You guys are acting like you've got like prophets who are fortune telling and stuff. It's so silly. The prophecy. You were the chosen one. I don't know. I'm not bashing the work put in. But people put a lot of work in to the data that they do. Because the data that the people and the work that the people have put in in the Reddit community is unparalleled. I've never seen anything like it. So NPC. I don't know why he used the word prophecy, but I think it was because of the Reddit thread about it. I don't think he picked that word out, I want to say. But, you know, people grab onto something and then they just have fun with it. So that could also be it. It could be more of a joke. The Reddit community is pretty notorious for, like, sort of hyperbolic. Because, I mean, they call themselves dumb money and, you know, deplorables and all this other stuff. I mean, so, like, there's sort of a self-actualization there, maybe, of like, we know this is silly, but we're gonna like call it what we want to call it. So it might be that. I might be joking about it, but it's the work that people put into that stuff is no joke. So we'll see. I'm gonna just stick with what I know with TA anyways this morning, and I think up to 30 you've got a good chance of some kind of a ramp. I know the options chain is built out at 30, but it's pretty much dead from 30 all the way to 35. So there's really nothing. If you check out the options chain, there's really nothing that would propel you forward from about 30 to 35. So like 31 to 35. There's just no, it's completely dry. So yeah, I think that my initial estimation was that if it could reach 30, we might see it push past and go on top of the creek. But I can't really imagine unless there's some other, again, catalyst. So maybe this idea of these swaps coming through, this is the quote unquote prophecy we were just joking about. But if it's true, then you could see it push past and then come back down, Big news for AMC, got this little gap down and now pushed up above 550 again. So kind of the rubber meets the road here. It's now made an advancement again over our pretty critical level at 548. No joke level. So we'll see. I don't really want to see a strong double top here, but it's kind of, that ship's already sailed. So we already kind of pushed over the top yesterday. So I guess my preference right now is that we're getting an SOS with a backup. And I know that this is not maybe what a lot of people want to see. They don't really want to see red. I get it. I really do. I get that you want to just see profit. You want to see it push up, and then it's not out of the realm of possibility. If it can find support at 548, I'm not going to like bat an eye on it and pretend like it has to go really low or something, Support is support. It's super straightforward. If you get it, great. We could see it just have a really high support built out and then go. But I honestly think it would be better for AMC. I know it sounds weird, but I do think in some ways it would be better for AMC to go ahead and go down to 5 and do that first and just get it over with. Kind of rip the Band-Aid off and just do it. I'm curious if we will because of the amount of buying that happened here, but I also wonder if a lot of that was to help drive the price low one more time. We will see. The old adage that people say is, the trend is your friend, and I agree with that to a degree, but there are times where the trend is designed to kind of get you into a distribution mode, or vice versa. So, sometimes you go down before you go up, and sometimes you go up before you go down. And that's just a really common thing in the market. So I'm going to watch very carefully this morning, 548 on AMC, and see what happens at 548. It looks like IWM has pretty much filled its gap, and this was to be expected. I didn't really think there would be a hesitation on that gap fill this morning. I think that we're going to see if sellers come back in. So this is a pretty decent little retracement, and we haven't really had a good pullback at all since this run started. So we've had consolidation, but consolidation and a pullback can be very different in terms of how they affect things like indicators and whatnot. So we'll see. We may get it going beyond, maybe a bigger push up here. We may see that it's finally kind of topping off. There was a lot of selling in that after-hours session on IWM. It was high volume. And so I'm curious. We'll see what happens. I think a lot of this ETF building that's going on is, we're buying into a lot of these stocks that are about to have major runs. So you're seeing a result of it cumulatively. I mean, that's a big candle, pretty decent volume. I'm on the 10-minute chart, so pretty good volume on that. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if we were topping, is what I've been trying to say. It's not that I want it to necessarily stop. I don't particularly care that much at this point, but at the same time, like, are we overcooked? Probably. Yeah. Are we due for some kind of a retracement? Yeah, I think so. And I genuinely think that the retracement might lead us back down to 210, as far as that might seem. Some folks are going to be like, no way, dude, this is too much volume. They're not going back down. Look, if we get above 227, I'll change my tune. If we can get above 227 with some support, I will be very different about IWM, because I think at that point you're looking at, you've bypassed the previous range completely, and you're just going to like keep going. And then you're going to go to all-time highs probably at that point. That's my estimation. So like, I will change my tune quite a bit after we hit, if we hit 227 and push above. Otherwise, this is a golden pocket retracement down at 210. It's also the previous high, which we really did not check. We actually went right past it with a gap. So if I'm looking at this like from a helicopter perspective, would it make sense to me to have this retrace back down and then continue? Yeah. You know, one more time back through wouldn't hurt us. And ultimately, that's kind of the way I saw the timing anyways. Maybe I'm wrong about the timing. You know, maybe I'm wrong about the timing. That's a possibility. I don't think I'm wrong that this is like a 4 top, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so usually what you see is after that, there's some kind of a retracement. It doesn't have to be as deep as I'm saying, but this is typically like what I would expect. So like at this point, I'm still thinking that like we come back down, even though that might not be the popular opinion right now, based on what everyone's seeing. I think it's a strong possibility. With the amount of volume in this, it's questionable. I think it'd be reasonable. You'd be reasonable to say, I don't know, Booksy, that's a lot of buy-in to just kind of sell right back down through that, you know. And I would say, yeah, you're right. I don't know, you know. But this is just the way that I have it timed. So I could change it, but I'm not going to change it. Not yet. So we'll see. One thing that could be off here with this S-curve is like this particular ramp. Like maybe, like I drew it around where I thought the SOS was, but it could be that this is like lifted higher, in which case it could be like a much tighter S-curve and I might have to adjust it. So there's that. I don't know. These are debatable things, in my opinion. I don't hold on to them like super tightly. So if it doesn't come back down, it doesn't come back down. But in terms of an M cross, it would be strange to not have any kind of consolidation here after making a big jump across a really, really major creek. So this is like a huge move out of an SOS. To not have any kind of a consolidation would be very odd. At least one pullback and would be enough, I think. And it doesn't have to be like 210. I think 218 is another candidate that if we didn't want to come down that low, we might see something like that. So, all right, let's check. So that's actually held above, I'm on the 30 minutes, so you can't really see the price action, but it came back down a little bit, and then it held above 549. It pushed up high. So this is 560, let's see. 565 is the current high. Good volume on that push. Looking good. It did come over the previous top. That's pretty normal for this this kind of a wave breakout. So when it goes parabolic, it almost always goes above the previous top. So I'm not particularly surprised by that move, that it did come higher. It's hitting the currently the highest creek we have, which is just really like top to top over here. And so right now it's pushing it. It's trying to push it a little bit, just kind of bounced on it. So that's probably as far as I would expect it to go without some kind of retracement. We'll see. Again, who knows? If there's a huge move in the books, then there's a huge move in the books. I'm not going to question it. jokingly called my thing a game of checkers today. There's some kind of a I get kind of lost in the weeds a lot when I'm looking at stuff, and there's always like a good reason for it, but just kind of poking fun at myself. Like sometimes it's pretty simple, you know, buying is buying, selling is selling. You don't need to like go further than that on some days. This is about as far as we came. We went to like 29.99 or something silly in pre-market. So timing wise, I don't know. I mean, I adjusted this a couple times, but it doesn't seem like it would necessarily hit the creek like now. There's good volume, so I wouldn't be surprised if we did get a big push up and it came up high to like 30, 40 or something like that. It's really important to note though, and I hope you guys are aware of this, because there's a lot of people out there that they don't look at TA, and so they don't care about certain levels. I care about the levels, so I'm gonna tell you that there's a major downtrend on this wedge action that we're about to hit at like 30-40. So if we were to go straight up from here, it'd be like 30-40. If we went later today, it'd be more like 30-20. So before you get like overexcited and say like we're gonna go to the moon all of a sudden, I need you to be very, very aware that like there's a strong possibility that if we don't stop there, that we come back down to there at least once. So even if we just like flew past it and like shot up to like 33 or 34, this is a heavy selling zone. You know, like you look back, this is where we've distributed frequently. We've distributed above $30 like consistently. So it's really important to note that. And then all the way up to, it's just more and more extreme as you go past 30 up to about 46. Like it's predominantly selling, I would say, or a great deal of it is selling above those numbers. So it's, while I'm encouraged by a big move and I would be excited to see it push past 30-40, I definitely would be excited about that. I just want to like let you know that I'm tempering my expectations because there's a pretty significant wall here that we haven't breached yet, and typically it does something. Does that make sense? So just be patient. Wait for that 30-40 level, you know, as best you can. Be careful if you're not watching the stream today. Just be mindful that like if you see it react strongly off of 30-40, really the only real guidance I could give you on this is that we just don't really want it to come back below 28-28. There's not really anything else I'm worried about right now. Like we could come back as low as 28-28, maybe even dip down a little bit, and we would be fine. We just don't want to like slide down and start breaking back below that level, particularly, especially 27.72. I want this to be a floor. If we make an extension up and get a hard rejection, it's fine as long as you hold support. That's what I'm trying to say. And if we do break through that somehow, I'm going to say that it's probably those $30 strikes. There's a ton of $30 strikes that would run into the money. But beyond that, there's almost nothing. So if you go from like 30, like 31 up to like 35, for example, the options chain is really dry. So there's not really much to get excited about in terms of a ramp. There's just no ramp. It would have to be something else that propels it forward. Yeah, AMC is ripping. It definitely looks like that pullback has shot us up quite a bit. There's a huge amount of volume. So I'm going to be cautious again about tops here, because it's important to note that like if you come above a top, you're now either in an SOS or an upthrust. You really can't have it either way. I mean, there's no other option. So once you hit the top, if you hit the top, the nature of coming back down changes dramatically. Okay, because if you don't hit the top, you can still travel backwards and go retrace, and you're probably still fine. But once you hit the buying climax, it's a different story. There's not really anything you can do. It's like you have to just make it or else. So it looks like 573 was the top. So I need to, again, word of caution here is if it goes above 573, it has to be an SOS or a UT. And I don't see any other option, you know. And an SOS doesn't mean it just keeps running. An SOS literally means sign of strength. It has to do with pushing above resistance. This is a wave jump, so like we've basically used this momentum to like push up high and cross this creek, this like blue line right here coming down. That one is a good jump. I think it's adequate. Normally, after you cross it, there's really nothing, I would say, when we talk about retracement, there's nothing that would prevent you from coming all the way back down to it. So as the crow flies, if we were to drop all the way to like 520, 525, most people would say, oh no, it's dead, you know. But really, like, that's totally normal. And when AMC does these big wave crosses like this and it's going to advance, sometimes it stays high, like really high up, and it just advances from like a really high position of strength. That would be like us coming back down to like 548 and not dropping below. Other times we drop really low and it can feel really bad, but as long as it doesn't come over the top, either of those drops is fine. If it comes over the top, you typically don't want to see like a deeper than 50% retracement. It's just a quiet rule of thumb. It's not really the end all be all, but it is something that I look at. So like if it went to like 574, I wouldn't want it to come back down beneath 545. You know, that's kind of what I'm saying. So we'll see. As soon as it breaches that, we'll have to look really carefully and see what happens. It looks like IWM is making another push, so it's making new highs. It just kind of used that gap to kind of slingshot it up a little higher. You know, on some time frames, these indicators have cooled quite a bit, and it just really looks like there's no stopping the momentum here of IWM. It just keeps going. Volume went from like a dropping position into about 218, which is kind of interesting, because that's kind of where I first imagined there'd be like a bigger ceiling, like right around 217. And then it just kind of like erased it all, and now it's like picked up again. So it looks very similar to the RSI. You're getting kind of this crown top, almost like a horns or something. And we'll see. You know, I don't know. I'm curious what happens at 227. That's basically the supply zone from the 2021 range. So if we erase 227 and come over that, I mean, frankly, the sky's the limit, in my opinion, at that point. So we're getting really close. We're like $1 away. Yeah, and part of me wonders if this is going to be if it is the top, what that does to AMC and GME here. It might be a healthy retracement. Is AMC topping off? It's just a small pullback. There's nothing to say about it right now. I would rather, I'll tell you, if you had to give me a choice, I would rather we push the resistance on we'll call it a fan line, which is really a creek. I'd rather we push this resistance, which we did. We just pushed up this resistance here, than go over the top. I think you can push resistance here and have strength. That just shows that you're advancing without pushing the top. Now, I know you guys are thinking, like, again, why does that matter? Because I don't know how to describe this. Like a pullback here, I don't know. I guess it wouldn't feel good to a lot of people, but a pullback here would do so much for AMC, I think. Back down to like 548 to buy off of 548 would be a really big deal. Or back down to even to 530, 532, to buy off of those levels would be a really big deal one more time. I know that's not what people are going to want to hear when you talk about a big day like this, you're like, well, why don't we just keep going? I don't want to hear that. You might have calls that are at 6 and you want them to run to the money, and I get it. I'm not like, I can't control the stock anyways. So like me just saying that shouldn't upset you. Um, I'm just saying like that kind of a retracement at this particular time could be really, really strong. If we don't get it, and if we push high, I honestly think that at that point, you don't want to come back beneath 548. I don't want to see 532 again. And if you really push high here, we might just need to kind of build out a top right along the creek and this bottom, and just go from there. Now, all these look pretty much the same because I'm thinking about upside. The possibility of downside is still very real because, like I said, once you go over the top, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone movie. Once you go over the top, you're gonna either be in a UT or a SOS. In a UT, this would probably form a distributive top here, and I don't know exactly what that would look like, but most of the time, for us, a distributive top is like we make a high, then we have like a bad advancement. Like this high drops back below the range or something, and it's like a weak advancement, and then you end up with like a really bad sell down that has another sign of weakness, and then you barely kind of scrape here, and you basically distribute again over the top. This is what usually happens to us in an SOS or an upthrust. So if this was going to be we call it a UTAD or something, or a UT. It just depends on the way you look at the rest of this. This would be what I would expect if it were going to go down. And that would be bad. That would probably take you all the way down to 5 and then below. Because that's the concept here of like, we're going to sell off and we're going to pass through the range, which is down in this area. So like, you would go all the way down past 5. So not ideal, right? An SOS would not have an incredible amount of weaknesses. So usually what would happen is that you would build out, and even if you came back down through the range, you may make considerably higher highs as you go, and then you could have like a small, you could have a backup. As long as this was healthy, you could still have a backup to the creek as like a spring, and then you could just go. But the idea is you'd be making higher lows on like low volume, that kind of stuff. That would be a lot stronger. For the most part, that's what I would look for in a potential SOS. If that doesn't happen, then what I would say is that, like, if we don't even get to the high, what I would say is that right now, what would be best for us would be to consolidate back down towards these levels somewhere between 548 and maybe 532 would be ideal. And either of those I would be cool with. I'd be like, sure, whatever. Let's make it happen, because at the end of the day, like, what that represents to me is just a simple backup to get liquidity. And usually that results in a nice, huge swing if the stock's ready to go. So here on GME, small backup here. Not much to talk about just yet. We're still advancing. There's nothing wrong with it per se. That's a high volume sell-off. So there's still a lot of pressure to not let it run over 30. My thought is there's profit takers here, but it's probably also some shorts in the play that don't want it to run higher and let those $30 calls into the money. So there's probably going to be a pretty decent wall. And we saw this in the pre-market. It didn't go over like $29.99. There's probably going to be a pretty decent wall at 30. I'd like to see that selling get bought up. Just eat it up. MPW is making the move. Yeah, I'll take a peek real quick. Trying to make sure I watch these levels on AMC. Here, I'll set an alert here at 5:54. I'll set another one above. Really need to make that alert like right on it. I should have just put it on the line. That's okay. I'll do that. It hits 574. That way if something crazy happens, I don't like walk past it here. Yeah. Yep. So it did back up a little bit. It didn't really distribute, which is good. This was what I was talking about as maybe a model of distribution for MPW is like, hey, it could kind of stop off here and go back for liquidity. Not the case, which means, at least for now, I think it's out. I don't want to like overhype it, but it looks out to me because it broke above this top. So it's making a move. This is kind of like the ceiling from back about a month ago in June, and it pushed higher. I would still not be surprised if we need to come back down to this pocket to just find some support. There hasn't really been much support built on it at all. If you look back at the history of this, it's been supply, supply, supply. Once it was support here, we bought off of it. This was at 485. This is support here, 485, and then you've got really mild support that really immediately turns into supply. So I would like to see this level here at 485. I know it's weird. It's like the same level as AMC. I'd like to see that level at 485. I'd like to see that hold. I wouldn't mind coming back down and checking that. In that scenario, that's what I'd like to see, and then I think continuation. So far so good. I mean, it's done everything it needs to do. I wish I could like, I don't know, I can't really communicate much more with this one other than what I've already communicated. Like it's actually done what it needs to do in terms of like crossing creeks and getting out. So everything about it looks good to go. I think maybe again one more pullback, kind of seeing that as like a common theme this morning. Like we may experience some chop or something in the market. I'm not sure. This might be a buying climax. We'll see. You know, it is so far because it's the highest volume bar we have on IWM. So I'm wondering if the market on the whole may experience kind of a buying climax here and then have some kind of consolidation period. It's just a thought. And that would put us in a really good place of strength going into like Monday or something. So yeah, heavy selling off that, man. I think that we're not in a bad spot. I don't want to make it over complicated here. Like this is important to hold as a support right here at 2860s. If 2860s can hold as a support, you should see another attempt, but that's a really high volume top here. So like really high volume. So like keep in mind that if buyers want to continue right now, there needs to be a lot of buying. Like a lot. It can't be like a half attempt. This looks like a pretty classic top kind of action, up and up again, which again isn't all bad. It's just that normally that leads to a bit of a sell down to reaccumulate. So Chocobo? Isn't that from Final Fantasy? Yeah, so support off that level would be good. GME just needs a lot of buyers. I can't stress it enough. On the one hand, you have effort versus reward, right? So like if there's a huge amount of effort on this part of sellers to short it down or to sell or whatever, paper hands, I don't care what you think it is selling, right? So I'm going to use the word selling. If there's a huge amount of effort on sellers' part to drive it down and they don't drive it very low, that is a lot of effort for very little reward. And that could be very easy to take advantage of if buyers buy back in. And that's usually what you see. But on the other hand, what we see is that a UT, which is an upthrust, usually has really high volume because it tells you it's typically institutional sell-off if it's an upthrust. So we'll see. We need to hold support here above 28.60, I would say. And it's going to be one of those days we're kind of like in a little pinch point. I would have liked to have seen a little bit higher on this push. I felt like we got more in the extended hour session. We walked right up to it. But I think that sell wall above us is probably going to be pretty heavy. So so we'll see. Knocking on the door here, right? I feel like that's a test, spy sniper. Anytime people say like short something and they're talking about some like meme stock, it's like they're trying to bait you into. I guess that's the definition of trolling. So what an upthrust doesn't do is an upthrust doesn't find support. So if this finds support, I wouldn't call it an upthrust. If it does break through support, after this heavy sell-off finishes, if it continues to break down through support, yeah, it's probably just an upthrust. I can look at the volume and interpret it however I want to interpret it. Until that move happens, you can't really call it for sure like an upthrust. What I'm saying is that there's usually, in an upthrust, there's a high volume candle to the upside, high volume candle to the downside. And on a bigger picture, that open and close tends to be below the floor. Does that make sense? So you end up with you start below like a level like 30, for example. You push way up through it, high volume. You sell all the way back down through it, high volume. And on the daily candle, you end up with a body of the candle that's beneath the floor and a huge amount of volume in the top. That's a very classic example of what we would call an upthrust, which is really just a inverted spring, if you want to call it that. And it usually propels the stock downward. That's not really what's happening here. It's just right now, all I'm saying is there's a high volume top above the floor. So where's the floor? It's 28.60s. I mean, we haven't broken it, so there's not much to say. You can do whatever you want. You can buy calls, you can buy puts, you can sell short, you can buy shares. I don't really care. You can sell calls, you can sell puts. You can do an iron condor or whatever they call it. You know what I mean? Like, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. You can do whatever you want to do. That's not why I'm here. I'm just here to give you my opinion on what I think with the chart and the levels. And what I do is specifically waveform and pattern analysis. So mostly waveform analysis at this point, because it works the best for me. So best of luck to you. I'm not trying to be a jerk. If you genuinely want to know, I'm trying to tell you what you would look for, but we're not there yet. Well, I don't think for GME you want to see it come back below 27.72. And I suppose at this point it's worth mentioning, this already had a push up in this lower range here, this little tiny pocket. So again, anything below, I mean, arguably this little dead zone here from like, I don't call it a dead zone, but it's kind of like an LPS right here. This little zone right before the SOS is about 28.60 down to 28.28. I don't think I would like heavily include that in the range. So I think it's okay if you come back across that and you go back through that today. That would be fine. That was kind of my initial thought, but we didn't come very high. So this volume is just ridiculous. They're definitely playing on people's expectations for today. Like, no doubt in my mind. On a tech sell-off, I don't really know much about it, but if tech is selling off, it's probably because of being way too inflated. I mean, you had the AI boom kind of starting up. I don't know if it's a sell-off so much as a retracement. I'd have to go look, but do I think the AI boom is over? No. So any kind of like sell-off right now with technology sector is probably just temporary. Your microchips, your storage units, your AI-driven software and hardware, if you want to call AI hardware, I don't know if that's a thing. I don't think that can be a thing, but all that stuff is going to be in a multi-year cyclical uptrend. I think it's going to have ups and downs. No, I don't think it's over. So if there's a sell-off going on, it's probably just rotating out positions and just getting ready for volatile pullbacks is a normal part of the market. So we're going to see a lot of volatility in the next several months going into the election. So we already have volatility. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens here on GME. I'm a little bit cautious about the this is possibly as a top, but it's weird, man. These candles are strange. I'm not really seeing. It looks to me like a more of an absorption of selling, but we'll see. There's a lot of volume here also. There's a lot of effort in this push up, so there probably was a lot of selling on the way up here. Maybe it's because the expectation is we're not going to go above 30 to the point of like causing all those calls to run into the money. You've got a huge amount of resistance to go up above 30. So if the expectation is we're not going to go above 30, that also kind of gives buyers a reason to sell as it goes up here. Like they're thinking it's going to be like a head fake or, you know, it's going to push up and not continue. It's close to what I drew out. I kind of thought we would peak slightly above 30, but we just may not do it at all. We'll see. We may just avoid it altogether. Because right now, even if we returned, it kind of, to me, would look like we would need to have some kind of like bottoming action here. And then we could advance again like later in the day if this were to happen. It doesn't seem like you would just go straight up again. I mean, I could be wrong. Things in the market move differently sometimes. And sometimes like I'll draw stuff like this and it'll just happen like super fast or way slower. You know, I'm just kind of looking at the general trend here and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It kind of makes me feel that it might need to take a breather for a bit. But if the selling truly got absorbed here, then you might, I don't know, could just take off. I'm just expecting there to be a mild creek cross, which is a local creek cross. That's the first M. The first M is almost always part of like an auto reaction, and maybe it may be a phase B top. Yeah, and it could be going up or it could be going down. I've kind of got it drawn down. It could technically be rising like this. The second M is always to get over the first M. Does that make sense? So if you want to learn how to doodle this kind of stuff, So AMC's coming back down towards the floor. That's how I do it. The first wave is always to push out above the first trend here, right? The first major trend. The second wave is usually has to do with the back up there and then jumping the second trend, wherever that is. So if you want to like doodle it, you can do that. I'm usually thinking about auto reactions. I'm thinking about levels that we dropped from. So right now, like $29, $29.10, probably going to be your auto reaction level, roughly that area. If it has an auto reaction here and it doesn't go lower, that's where I would put it. I think you would push all the way back up to there, and then, yeah, the rest is just sort of speculation on my part. But you could see why you would need to have some time to kind of go across any kind of downtrend. So we'll see. Yeah, this sort of double top bit doesn't usually bode super well in my book, but there's also a trend here. So one of the things you can do that's fairly straightforward is just come back and draw the trend. And I think it starts at like the gap up. It's roughly right there. So again, this pocket's fair game, I think, down to, I didn't really want it to go below 28.60, but if it went below 28.60 a little bit, I don't think it would kill us. AMC's walked right back down to its floor. Heavy selling as well on that top. Again, the selling isn't as important as, so yeah, it's dropped it. It's going to try to go. The selling isn't as important as the support. So keep in mind that like heavy selling matters if it ends up dropping support. Heavy selling isn't as important if it doesn't drop support. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this looks about right. So there's a decent bounce there off of the bottom. How low did it go? It went to 28.57. So it went pretty low. Hard to say. It's too low. If that's like a weakness or something. I don't think dipping back into the previous range is always a bad thing. But usually when bulls are in charge, you can kind of avoid those moves. So in the best and most powerful like accumulation ranges that you see, there's not usually a pushback that low. So right now it's definitely still in like a sell-off mode. We need to find a footing and get back up and start chopping. We need to start creating a bottom, or it could get a lot worse. It's going to get way worse if it drops below that level, like considerably worse. So same goes for AMC. If it drops below 548, it's probable it will get considerably worse before it gets better. We'll see. What's the floor for AMC? I mean, 548. We've done this before. We've done this dance before. We really haven't been able to find any support over 548, like ever. If you look back at the history of this chart, everything above 548 has always been supply, like 100% of the time. So finding any kind of support above 548 would be a huge, huge deal for AMC. And I'm specifically saying 548. I'm not saying 550, because I don't think it's 550. I think it's 548. And that's not because I'm some kind of hipster. It's the drop-off level from over here. And I know it's very close to 550, so who cares? I care. Like, if it held 549, I wouldn't be sad. And, like, if you thought it was 550, you might be sad. You know what I mean? Like, that's the difference. So I'm going to call it what I want to call it. So I'm calling it 548 because I think that's what it is. And I think that we haven't at all held support at 548 and above. So this whole region has been a supply zone. When you look at it that way, it's pretty easy to see that that's where the need is. You need to turn it into a demand zone. Does that make sense? If you go back to the 15th of May and you look at where that is on IWM, that's kind of like the topping point on IWM, which is kind of interesting. So in some ways, both AMC and GME did this. They went up really, 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 really high, right? Really far. But they both returned back to kind of that first day's top. And it's interesting because it's almost like the second day was just like a bonus round. Like we spent literally like no time there. And then the third day is back in the first day. And what's interesting, if you look at, again, IWM, this is kind of like where it's topping off on like the 15th. And so, not surprisingly, that's also where AMC and GME have a range top. I mean, they both kind of have a similar story in that regard. It's not the exact same, but it's pretty similar. And so this whole area has been our top, you know. So if we want to see a run, we got to like build a support here, you know. And I've talked about the possibility of coming lower. There's people who've said that they think it's going to go to 450 first. There's people who think it needs to go even lower to like make a spring way down here below 430. I'm not like really a big fan of either of those because of where we are. It's not that I'm against a retracement at this point. We still haven't come back above the top, but we are in a distribution area, like potentially. So you have to be really careful for what you wish for, because a double top here that distributes, I mean, it might not be the easiest argument, but I think you could argue that could form a major sell down. You know, it could be very bearish. And then in addition to that, and we talked about it yesterday, but there's a bit more people on the stream right now. We did like an after hours kind of thing. This is really your trend. So I don't really want to drop the trend, which means I don't really want to come below 5 again. And thankfully there is a gap there. It's also high liquidity at 485, which I still think is like more likely. And that's the case of what happened back here, is it returned to high liquidity. But I don't really want to go like super low. I know there's a lot of folks that want to see that bigger retracement. I wouldn't mind going to 5. I wouldn't mind going back down to 532 if the top is healthy. You know, if we don't make too much of an advancement now, I wouldn't mind that. But I definitely wouldn't want to come super, super, super low. Yeah, if we run, it's going to go, I'm pretty confident we're going to hit 755 first. There's a very strong chance that that's kind of your big exit move. And then after that point, if there's continuation, it's kind of like what happened here, like that big first day or so. I want to say it was all Monday, I guess. It was a long day Monday, wasn't it? First day or so kind of gets you to the next floor, and that's where I think the next floor is. And it also is the head and shoulder target. It's one of the S-curve targets. There's a lot of good targets at 755. So I think that's where it's going to be. And yes, it is the previous kind of floor over here. So it makes sense to me. As long as we hold that, I think that you could see a secondary run that goes up pretty high. I've got it going really, really high, but that's because I'm looking for a particular hit. It may not get that high. You know, it could only go up to about 15 something and then die off. And I don't want to be shooting myself in the foot here, but there's a really important creek that we just haven't messed with, which is kind of the higher two creeks up here, and they go from about 15 to 18. And I've been talking about that for quite a while. So that's my guess for like a secondary extension. If we went to like $14.50 or $15 even, and then we started selling down, I'm not going to like sit there and pretend like it has to go higher. High is high, so So when you look at this big picture, it's different than sort of short term. If this, like I said, if this only went to like just above here, I probably wouldn't bat an eye. You know, if it only went to like 15 something, I would just be like, okay. Because there's another target that I haven't really talked about, which is from the bottom to where I think the middle is, and that's like, it really only goes to about 1570 or something. And that one would be like the low end. So if it went there and then it hit that in pre-market, for example, let's say it hits like 1680 in pre-market or something, and then it opened up at 13. Guys, I'm not going to sit there and like hold through it. You know, that's just not me. Because at that point, I'm like, fine. We did the same thing back here. We went really pretty high. We went to like 14 something, which was my target. And then it opened lower, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to hold it. I didn't end up getting out till like 11, but I saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, I'm done. So you can't really anticipate that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know what's going to happen exactly when it gets up here. So it's better to just know, like, ballpark. I think it could be this whole pocket from about 14, if I'm going to give myself a little bit of room, up to about 18. And that's about as far as I would want to go with this trade right now. So, but that's in the event that 755 produces a secondary run up. I think you could see a massively high extension, kind of like we did over here. I really do. But I don't know, man. Like, things don't always have to be the way that we imagine them, and anything can happen. We could hit 755 and start chopping back down. And then what? You know, you're kind of like, okay, well, what does that mean? I don't know. Go back to the drawing board, see what you missed. See if there's a possibility that it's doing a slingshot before it goes up again. You know, maybe it's a later move in August or something. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that could happen. We all want the same kind of results as the first move, but it may not happen that way. So being flexible as a trader is a big part of a winning strategy. It's like you plan and you plan and you plan, and then if things don't go your way, you got to be flexible. You got to be willing to adapt. Otherwise, you lose money. You just take what you get. You don't throw a fit. Yeah, GME looks like it's making that first M. So here, this is a little minor creek jump. You can see the pullback and then the advancement. This should be like a first cross here. I would suggest that there's probably going to be a bigger backup, but it could be ascending. You know, it could just go. I don't know if this has to come low or something. That's never like a rule. But if it did, then I would look for another one. Does that make sense? And again, it could be high. It could be way low. It really doesn't make a huge difference to me. So what you'll watch for now is just a bottom range to form. It's looking really tight right now, so we'll see. Like, it's very compact. It's moving very quickly, which may indicate that we have a faster than normal range build out. Like, could be very quick. So we'll see how high it goes, and then we'll draw our second marks appropriately. But this would just be a wave out and then pushing up. What was the number that I said? Like 2910 or something? Does that look right to me? It might have been a little off, but I'll just keep 2910 since I said it earlier. 6.6 million short shares available. Well, on which stock? Is that GME? I forgot to put the garbage out. Oh, he just rolled by the house. All right, garbage man. Crap. Oh, well. AMC. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I don't particularly care about that. What do you mean? I don't. I mean, it's just not that big of a deal. I get where the fear factor comes in, but this is happening like all the time on AMC. Like they're constantly rotating in and out of positions and adjusting and making shares made available. And you have to understand, like every time there's a buy-in, somebody could make those shares available. So you could have 100 million in volume when all those shares could be available. You know, like if somebody wanted to lend them out, an institution doesn't usually lend out all their shares, but they're going to send them to a lender, you know, as soon as they get them and they want to make money on them. AMC has historically been the most profitable. I mean, it's just insane. We looked at it last year. It was the most profitable for share lending of any stock in the market. I mean, why not? Because there were tons of shorts that wanted to play in this stock. So at this point, do I think those shorts still have an agenda? Probably. But, you know, every single time this thing makes a move, we don't need to like bat an eye at it and flinch. I just think that's unnecessary. Today, let's see what the volume is, at least on the TradingView chart. Yeah, it says 7.9 million. Is that right? That seems really low. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, I mean, so 7 million shares have been traded today. So if somebody went short 6 million of those shares, you'd still have 1 million shares left. And this only an hour into the market. Is it an adequate wall? Maybe. But if this is going to run, this is going to be a lot more than a 7 million volume day or an 8 million volume day. I don't know why I pay for trash pickup. I miss it more than I catch it. I'm just, I don't even know why they're coming today because it's early. Usually they come tomorrow. So I'm a little lost. Maybe there's some kind of a holiday schedule for some reason. Maybe it was a special trash pickup. Yeah, because the neighbor didn't put their trash out. Maybe they were doing something else. That irritates me. Yeah, so I don't know. Like, if you have a $34 million day, you know, and that's kind of what we had on this bigger candle over here, and there's been bigger ones. Like, this was like a $48 million day. 6 million shares is a very small percentage of that. So is it enough to set up a shorting, like a wall, a sell wall? Yeah, I mean, maybe, you know, if somebody wanted to do that, they could do it. But it doesn't really change, in my opinion, it doesn't really change the narrative. Like, I was already kind of looking at a potential pullback here in the market. So for me, it's like, whatever. I don't know. It's well-timed, I guess, news. Or well-timed something, data. I'm not trying to be bearish. I'm really not. I'm just saying, like, the idea of a pullback here doesn't really faze me. So the idea of not running today, in particular, actually wouldn't be that bad if we can make the appropriate moves. It could be really, really positive. Like, super positive, you know? So... when I zoom out, it just seems like institutions are accumulating in both AMC and GE. Well, that move that we just saw in GME, I mean, there's just really not been much like it in the history of GME. This, like, bizarre, like, chopping motion doesn't exist anywhere in, like, recent years. Like, it's just a really strange, it's just bizarre. To do this for that long of a time, I would suggest it is an ascending accumulation, not a short accumulation. I think it's a very slow and steady accumulation for some kind of a move coming. But what my normal thought is about that is like this would normally happen way faster. This is usually what I would expect, that you'd get this kind of quick buy-in and then a drop and then advancement. We talk about it a lot on the this particular channel, but like there's a pretty common way that you see an ascending accumulation, and it's like a parabolic buy-in where you get like these rapid buy-ups and then the stock just kind of dies, and then there's a rapid buy-up and then the stock just kind of dies, and there's a rapid buy-up and the stock just kind of dies. And it does this until it kind of pinnacles at a top. And then usually you get kind of a pullback. And it's not that the stock's dying, because it's actually holding all these creeks that it jumps over. It's just that that's a way of slowly accumulating, because that way you can buy in a lot of shares without running the price over like a breakout. Usually they come right up to the edge. Then typically you see it drop, and this is the way it typically happens, is that you might come back down to a previous bottom, which is usually this now acts as like a preliminary, preliminary kind of support, if you want to call it that, back here. And then you usually end up coming back down to check it, and then you go. And this is very common. If you look at almost all of the big runs, you'll see something similar to this, and then it advances over whatever resistance you're trying to get over here, And usually if we're looking at waveform theory, it's kind of like we abandoned some kind of a cross early on. Like there may have been a trend that just kind of got left behind, and we usually go back and we test it, and then we end up kind of generating like another, on a ramp, we end up generating like another cross here. So the wave actually comes up, drops low, and then advances. And I call that like a slingshot, because that's what it does. And if it's a healthy retracement, it's all good. So what GME looks like to me is like some kind of a weird, long, strange version of that, where it just the volume stayed kind of lower. It's all elevated volume compared to what it was maybe back in April, but it just looks like a really bizarrely long version of that. You can see it on the big picture that it's like, oh, it's accelerating, it's narrowing. That would indicate that you're probably going to have a pullback. They're like, where does it go, I don't know. I mean, worst case scenario, I guess we could just do like a fib retracement and see where it could go. But I feel like it's in a good spot, and I would prefer it to stay high here. I guess looking back on it now, I may identify this level as a possible level too, this 2730 level. Right here, there's a support back here around 2730. Maybe. Like this could be a possible level. It seems like that would be maybe the lowest if it came back down. Because it also, you can see on the trend, like there's a trend that comes pretty low here. I drew it out, and I would say that's as low as I'd want to see it go. We kind of abandoned that trend, of course, when we went parabolic, but that's normal. That's very normal. So yeah, that's about right. So maybe if you don't have that one on your chart, maybe you could put that one on your chart. So draw this pink trend here, and that's a very logical place if we came back down. So it just depends on how quickly you get there, And I'm not saying it can't continue to run right now. It's not really what this conversation's about right here. I mean, it could still have an extension up, I think, today, or tomorrow. But I think that the nature of a pullback might be questionable for some folks. But it can be very important and very significant to have that final retracement after a huge accumulation, to have like that final sell-off and shake out paper hands, like shake out the people that are going to sell when you advance, and to load up on some more shorts for a little squeeze action. So on this I was talking about yesterday on this, I was talking about how I thought maybe we see this move into like Monday or Friday, and that this is sort of there's a dip incoming, you know. People got really hyped up because of the volume last night, and people got really hyped up when GME looks like it's getting ready to go. But it doesn't mean that there can't be, you know, a moment of taking a breath and just rebuilding and then going. I mean, that's okay. It really is. I genuinely think that's probably healthy for the stock, probably the best, you know, best we could ask for is to have a really good, solid, like, backup. And so I don't really want to go lower than these two levels here, this like purple region I've got. But if it did, I wouldn't be super concerned if it kind of dipped through here and then came back up. So I'll just leave it at that. Because, yeah, I'm looking at it now and I'm like, sure, I could see that as a distinct possibility. Everybody always wants to know, like, well, isn't there like a model where it just kind of runs and just keeps going? Sure, I mean, that's true. And GME's had some pretty interesting backups that have been very, like, low key. You know, like I'm drawing this really low, kind of like it's an accumulation down low, but sometimes these moves can be much more like a big bounce, you know, and then they can pretty much do something like that too. It's not like every single time it has to be this like super low retracement. You know, you go back to look at the original run up here on GME, you'll see what I mean. This is really more like the bounce, isn't it? I mean, it just kind of came back. There was a deep retracement, right? But then look at the rest of the price action. It's all like bouncing like really high up, and then it just kind of advances. This is not quite what I drew, you know, in the local time frame, is it? It's more flat and like low. So like this kind of a backup is not unheard of either. We might see something like that right here. Maybe it builds out underneath 30 and then runs. You know, I don't want to make it sound like it's some kind of a fixed structure, but the nature of it is the same, which is you're getting out, you're doing like that final shakeout, and I think it's necessary. Usually it does good things like cool indicators off and whatnot. So there's a lot of good stuff that would come from it. And it gives you as a retail, if it's healthy, gives you an opportunity to buy in. That's where I've took my main orders in with GME, was on that SOS. Call me a shill, I guess, but I hadn't really owned a lot of GME shares for the last few years because it just kept going down. And I wasn't in the original GME run. So for me, it wasn't like I'm holding a position forever. It was just like, okay, well, when do I want to get in? And I saw what was happening with AMC, and I did hold AMC. I still hold AMC through a lot of that garbage. AMC got butchered. GME did far better. But so I was kind of waiting to get in on GME. When I saw that move to 17, I was like, yep, that's it. You know, that's what I'm looking for. So I don't have the lowest average because I wasn't just kind of, I don't say blindly buying, but that's just not what my strategy was. I was waiting for a good entry. So what I'm saying right now is like, basically, I'm not really worried if we have like a sell down. There's people that are going to think that that somehow means that this is broken, and it just depends on how low it goes. There's no one size fits all, you know? So this actually looks like it might try to build a higher high here on the local time frame. Just kind of eyeballed this earlier, but it may end up being kind of right. So we'll see. If it comes down and it makes a new low, which it just did, then we haven't finished whatever trend we're in. So we're still in like a downward trend. This is an auto reaction, but it's not over, if that makes sense. That probably is the selling climax here, not here. Yeah, you try to knock it down. In which case, this may actually be a much larger trend down. So we unfortunately didn't work our way out enough, and so there wasn't a bottom. And you got nobody to blame but yourself. Because you're like, what? No, I mean it's buyers. There's just not, they're not here right this second. So not enough of them, anyways. And if institutional buyers are cool with this, then that means there's some kind of reason for it. Maybe it's not, not meant to go right this second. We can start doing some preliminary kind of wave analysis on it in just a minute, but I want to see what happens if it loses this. It might be finished, because if it loses this wave, sometimes I'm a little off with it, and it could be like a little bit more narrow, or it could be a little wider. Every now and then you'll see it kind of break out and then come back up and finish in like a double top motion. I still think that's a possibility, but I'd have to see that motion go through. But at the present moment, I'm curious because I remember I was talking about it very first thing. In extended hours, it looks like the wave is finished. If you go to like extended hours trading, this arc looks like it's broken already. So this is just sort of a second move up. I'll show you what I mean. Yeah, I mean, to me, it looks like the arc, I can't be positive because it's my drawing. So, I can change it, obviously, if I wanted to change it. But to me, it looks like it kind of finished with that after hours price action. So, and then it didn't come as high, so it looks like a big old like hook almost. So if you put extended hours on here, to me it looks like it finished at $29.99. That's what I was worried about yesterday. I know I said it at least 2 or 3 times in the end of the day, but I kept repeating because I was worried. I said, well, I'm really concerned it's going to come up and then come back down and not give us the top. I really don't want that to happen. So I'm hoping that it still tries it one more time here, but I don't like that. It's happened on GME and AMC a couple times. The last time, right before Roaring Kitty's stream or whatever, that was the time it did that really major move up, and then it came way back down. People were so mad, and I was like, yeah, I don't. So on my part, I had already gotten out of my stuff because I didn't expect it to run anymore because it just hit my technical top. So then when it moved in extended hours, I was pleasantly whoa, that's crazy. But then it came all the way back down and it opened kind of where it was. And I was like, crap. So people that were thinking it was going to run didn't get the top. I just happened to be one of the opinion that it wasn't going to go at all. So to me, it was a complete anomaly. It didn't hurt me or help me. It just happened. But it definitely happened that way, and I was frustrated for folks. So I did not want to see that kind of same thing happen here, where it hits like a peak and then opens low, and then you never get to that peak again. That's really frustrating. It really is. So I feel for you if it doesn't go up. There's hope. It's just, you never know. The way that the after hours is played into the stock, it can really be pretty diverse. Sometimes it's a really big help, sometimes a really big hindrance. So that's a good wick right there on the 6-minute. Wicked real low, 28.48, came all the way back above. So on the 6-minute, that candle opened and closed above 28.60. It could be a little bit of a weakness, but if we can bottom here, it may just never go back down. So as long as we don't like build a range and then do that kind of stuff like later after we start range building, I'm not super concerned. This looked like the primary sell-off to me, but I think this might be it. Again, we'll see. We're going to see if it jumps across now, and then we'll watch and see if we can form out a kind of... So this wave didn't really break it, unfortunately, and then this wave, we'll see. This has to break it. I don't think there's anywhere else to go here. Can't make it any wider. So one more, and then we should be able to start developing a sideways action potentially to get us out of here. AMC is holding up surprisingly well, although it did dip to, it looks like 547. It's the same thing as GME. It's going back and testing. I mean, it's the same exact thing. It's going back down and testing the floor. They're moving in tandem today for sure. So both of them made like a really powerful, strong move above the recent, tops. And then both of them came back down to check the floor. They both have a wick down through the floor. That makes me a little nervous. I think it's a sell test to see if there's a lot of sellers jumping on it. If they find that there was a lot of sellers that just triggered beneath that floor, they may drop the price again. It's a way of kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Sort of like just checking the strength of the stock, I guess, to see if there's still a lot of paper hands in it or sellers in it. And that's the nature of a spring, is you're checking to see if there's a sell-off that happens. And if there isn't a strong sell-off that happens after a spring, that's why the volume, the volume just dries out and they absorb all the selling, and then the volume dries out on a spring action, it's a really good spring because it means that there really wasn't a lot of continuation and the sellers are kind of done. They're exhausted. And then the buyers can just gently buy back up. That's why on a good spring action, you'll see a really heavy volume sell down and then a really low volume buy back up. It's just sort of like the final liquidity dive. And it shows that there's not continuative strength underneath the range for continuation down. And then you just start a markup. You go the other way. You say, okay, well, there's no downward momentum, Unfortunately, the same is true for an upthrust. We see that happen and you're a buyer and you see it go and you're like, oh, it's an upthrust. And it ends up being like a head fake, basically what people call it, where it pokes above and comes back below. It's the same thing. It's like the buyers get absorbed and there's just no more buyers. And so there's no push to the upside that's eminent. So then they reverse it and go the other way. So what makes me nervous about that is that if you see it break below a floor early, it usually means that there's not a strong enough buy wall there. So one thing that bothers me about this kind of a push down to 547, which is clearly a penny below where I want it to go, one thing that's evident there is like on pretty light volume, they were able to push it back through that floor, and that bothers me. Like, where are the buyers? Where's the stopping power, It would have been nice to have kind of like come up to this particular creek at 550 and just not been able to advance. That would have been a little bit better in my opinion. Same for GME. It's just kind of like wick down through that floor and it's like, where are the buyers? Why is there not a wall there? Why is it so cheap to like drive the price back low? And some of you will say like, well, it's some algorithmic thing where they're just going to catch someone's buy order down here or something. Look, that stuff does happen, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I would never say that because it does happen. But it's like you can do gymnastics, mental gymnastics all you want. For me, it's as simple as where's the wall supposed to be? Why is it not there? That's as far as I need to go with it. It's like Okay, so what? They did that, but where were all the buyers, you know? They're not there. There's no stopping power. You're not going to stop. Is that frustrating for you? Yeah, probably. Because as a retail trader, you're like, why, you know, why? We're all bullish. Why can't it just go up? Because institutions drive the price and they're the ones that have the big money that can move the stock. They'll spend the money they want to spend to put the stock where they want to put it. That's why they're called operators. So if they want to drive the price back down through a support, they'll instigate a buy-in and a sell-off. They'll drive the price low. Part of that could be a long operator design. You know, we were talking about this on the big picture. It's like, I don't really see a pullback here as a negative thing. Depending on how low it goes, it could be really positive. This could be like a big absorption of selling in paper hands, and you're loading up more shorts, and then the next time you go up, that sell wall's gone, you know? And then you don't have all those people that are trying to sell at that level again. You can just bypass it next time. Because you got to remember, like, in the grand scheme of things, if the bottom has been tested and it's strong, and this is a buy up from the bottom, this is just going to be like a pullback. And then you could, well, as soon as you find your floor, you can just go. And just like AMC, you're really in a pocket where this has historically been an area we've sold down from right here. So look at the heavy sell-off that happened back on the 16th and 17th of May. And then notice that that's been like the wall. You know, I'm color coding these areas quite a bit, but that's definitely been like a range that's caused a lot of problems for GME. It's largely been a sell down area here and here. So much like AMC, you really need to see it kind of pass through this and build a support. And it's been hard to do that. We've had a lot of volume in the top, a lot of sellers trying to stop the advance of AMC right here, you know. So you got to get rid of them or you're not going to advance. One way to do that is just buy through it. Just the other way to do it is to create, you know, all kinds of crazy traps and head fakes and backups and do all this stuff to kind of shake people out of the play. And that might require some shenanigans. So what happened to the prediction from yesterday about us dropping with a small double bottom? I mean, it's still there. I don't know. If I'm saying something different, then I don't know what I'm saying differently. But yeah, I think I mentioned that GME might gap up and then drop low. And it kind of didn't do that, right? It went the other way. So, but similar price action, though, in terms of like a predict and come back down. I'm going to try reconnecting. I don't know what just happened. I don't know what's going on. But if my stream can't maintain, then I'm going to have to shut it down. So, yeah, I don't know what happened, but it's not looking great. Yeah, so I'm not sure if, I don't know. I can't do anything about that right now. I already reset it. So it's dropping frames here and there. I wish it wasn't. I don't know why it's doing that. I try to clean it up when that happens, but there's nothing else I can really do at this point. So it's choppy. I'm sorry. Hopefully it cleans up in a minute. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it gets like I get like a massive spike in viewers, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it seems like I don't know what that is. If they're bots or something, and then it like dumps the stream. Like it doesn't even show up on my stream thing. It went from like 70 to like 130 all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden my stream starts like getting choppy. I don't know if again it's like a bot thing where like a bunch of bots are coming in, and then it usually dumps off of a cliff, after that. Probably because people are like, oh, it's choppy and it's not working. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. What I usually do is just reset it. So I go and I turn the stream off and back on again very quickly so that it resets. Man, it's still like messed up. Yeah, isn't that weird? But I don't think there was 114 people all of a sudden. That doesn't make sense. I think it's some kind of bot. I really do. I don't know what it is. Isn't that weird? Yeah, it happens every now and then. I kind of feeling it might be like somebody that's coming in, like maybe bots bring like 30 at a time or something, or 20 at a time. I have no idea. It's super strange. This has not happened like once. It's happened quite a bit. It's almost always the same. So. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know, man. I'm not really big into like tinfoil hat stuff though. It's just, I think it's just YouTube doing YouTube stuff most of the time. Well, I'm not going to complain if we can stay above the floor on AMC. Like, I don't want to make it sound like it has to go lower or something. I've been very like adamant that there's a kind of a high road and a low road, and that the low road isn't really bad. Like coming back down seems really bad. I don't really think it would be that bad though. At this point, I'd rather do the high road just because it'd be easier. The greedy emu and the smelly bum. That's what I should call it. It'll be easier, right? So at this point, I'm not really a huge fan of the idea of coming back really low, even though I know I've talked about it quite a bit, because we're doing such a good job right now of like a high volume push and hold over 550, except for that little wick down, which bugs me. There's not really been any indication that we need to like distribute just yet. And I would love to just hold 550, I really would. It's your baloney guy. He's mad that I dropped him. Well, if his baloney wasn't like 10 cents or 30 cents an ounce or something ridiculous, I don't remember what it was. This is expensive. I don't even eat bologna. That's the funny thing. It's even funnier for me. It's like ironic. Complaining about how expensive bologna was because of the inflation. I'm basically like they call it like pescatarian or whatever. I do like fish and eggs, but I don't do any kind of red meat or chicken or anything. It's funny. I wouldn't touch bologna with a 10-foot stick nowadays. When I was a kid, I like love that kind of stuff. Bolognas and hot dogs and mystery meat. I don't know if you guys ever seen like the Arby's thing or whatever. I've never worked there, but I remember somebody talked about it once, and it's like a block of meat. It's just like a block of some mystery meat, and they slice it up or whatever, and it's just, I'm like, what? I'm like, what is that? What are you feeding people? I mean, to be fair, people eat all kinds of animal parts all the time. It's not like the weirdest thing ever, but what bugs me a lot about some of that stuff is like you just don't know what's in it. They'll just tell you like there's an assortment of meats and stuff in it. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. May contain bits of human DNA. It's like, all right, Soylent Green over here. Gosh. Yeah, you guys eat whatever you want to eat. I'm not going to judge you. We all have our own diets for different reasons. I remember I got in an argument like a year ago. It'd be funny if some of you guys remember this, but there was a dude that came in and he was so like angry. He thought I was such a dummy for like basically being a vegetarian, and he was like so mad at me for not supporting like meat eaters in that way. And I was like, dude, you can eat whatever you want to eat. I'm telling you what's right for me. And he was like basically saying that like I was like a hypocrite because I have killed a bug before. And he was like, don't you think bugs have emotions or something? I was like, what are you talking about? You're like blowing this way out of proportion. I'm really not trying to tell everybody else. I'm not activist, food activist or something. I'm not walking around every day like smacking, chicken fingers out of people's hands. I'm not doing that. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. My family eats meat. Like, it's so stupid. I think it's like a personal decision. You have to decide what's best for you. And if you live in a place where you can choose, then it's a blessing, and you can choose. We don't all live in places where you have a choice, and you just got to eat what you can. That's fine. But I remember like that happened, and I was like so like what in the world was that even about? Like, I had to ban the guy. I'm not a vegan though. I eat fish and eggs, and I'll eat like animal product. Like, I know there's gelatin in certain things, and it's like you can, if you're a vegan, you're somebody that, so they would call me like a JV vegetarian. I wouldn't even be like a real vegetarian. But they would say that like you can't eat anything with animal products, for example. That's very different than like somebody who's, I prefer to eat more plants, because I think it is better for us as a human race if we have the choice to not overtax our own system. And B, yeah, I think there's some animal cruelty that does exist, and I'm not really a fan of it. But mostly the reason that I got into it was because of dietary problems. Like, I have chronically high cholesterol. My body absorbs, or rather it synthesizes too much bad cholesterol. So I have to be really careful with like the high lipid meats, because my body will oversynthesize like lipids. And so like those fatty acids and junk that you get, like some people, they do fine with those. My body does not do it well, doesn't do it right. So unless I want to die, 30 years early, I had to do a diet change. And the diet change doesn't even fix the problem. It just like mitigates. It basically just helps me not make it worse. So I had to move to like healthier fats, and that was what started it. And then, later I develop other opinions about it, but they're just my opinions. And I think we live in a world right now, if you're in a country where you can choose, like, you should have the right to choose. Just decide what you think is best. But I grew up, I've eaten everything under the sun, basically. I mean, I don't know. But the guy that was mad about it was like mad because he was saying like I was an idiot because I didn't understand like how eating meat isn't bad, and like I was a hypocrite because it's like stupid stuff like that. And I was just like, this is not even the argument that I was having. You're having like a completely different argument from me. I was just advocating at that time. I literally was just talking about, I know I'm not talking about stocks right now. I'll get back to it. But I was literally just talking about eating healthy. and what was right for me, and like how what I'd learned about eating healthy, and what things I just wanted to share. This guy just started having a complete, it was like he was arguing with vegans every day or something. He must be like a meat eater that lives in Portland, Oregon, and he just gets bombarded. People throw like blood on his door or something. And so he just thought I was, he just thought I was like, you know, some like animal cruelty activist. I don't want to be hurtful to animals. I don't. I want to live peacefully with all things if I can. But I'll kill a bug if it's biting me, you know, like I don't know what else to say. But the guy went like crazy, and I was just like, dude, who are you arguing with? I just was like so confused. I don't know if some of you may remember it, but it was just a really strange, that was a strange time to be on this kind of a stream. We had a lot of guys coming like that were just going AWOL. And I was like, I'm not ignorant. You might think I am. I'm really not. I'm aware that some people have a goat because it's like what provides food for their family. Like they have one, you know what I mean? Like that used to be like a common thing in most countries. Like you would have, if you had a cattle or livestock, it was, you only invested in it because it was good for your family. You wouldn't have like a pet hamster that you had to feed because that'd be a huge waste of money. The only animals you had were utilitarian. You know, if they didn't serve a good purpose, it was just exhausting and you had to do that. You know, you're not going to keep a goat alive just for fun. You're going to do it because it provides milk or whatever for your family. Meat eventually, you know, like things like that. So it's like, I'm not ignorant of that. I know there's plenty of places in the world where that's totally still the case. But I don't live in that place. I live in a place with highly processed meats, chicken nugget, bologna, hot dogs, where everything is like, that's cheap is disgusting and overprocessed. I'm sorry, but it just is. You know, that you can buy way better, you can buy something that's healthy that's stupid expensive, or you can buy a bunch of little Debbies, you know, and become diabetic. Like that's the country I live in. So I have to make a choice between eating healthy and not eating healthy. It's going to cost me, and it stinks. It's not fun. You know, it takes a lot of effort to eat healthy in America. So I'm sorry, it just does. And now even more so than ever, it's been really expensive. That's the country I live in. So I have to choose between, do I want to get more volume and buy like the chicken nuggets, you know, or the highly processed meats and stuff that probably are going to kill me anyways faster than I'm already dying, you know? Or do I want to, unfortunately, maybe buy less but eat healthier? I think I'll just eat broccoli, you know? Like, that's just the way it is for me. Like, that's my choice. So, some people don't live in that country. They live in a country where they don't have a choice. They're going to eat what's available to them. They're going to work for it. Well, that's fine. Most of human history was like that, you know? I mean, we've had 10,000 plus years of human history where like that was not the case, that you get to choose what you get to eat, you know? That's a modern luxury. But I don't live 10,000 years ago. I live now. So, like, you know, if I lived somewhere else and I didn't have any other choices, then I would just eat when I'm able to. I feel like that's a pretty respectable opinion. I feel like that's a reasonable opinion. You know? Greek yogurt. I eat Greek yogurt, yeah. The chicken. Yeah, I know, because it's like in our community too, people always talk about chicken tendies and stuff, and I'm like, it's funny. There's places that you would be, it's kind of surprising. I try to do the raised beds. My garden is suffering. It's hard work and it doesn't really pay off as well just because it's hard here to keep it alive. It's too hot. All my stuff dies like so fast when the heat comes up. I need a greenhouse or something. I'm just haven't had time to like sit around and figure out how that would work. But yeah, you guys have great suggestions. I'm all about like beans and veggies, and I'll eat fish. You know, I eat fish like a few times a week, usually a couple times a week at least. I'll have like a tuna packet or something for lunch, like one of the bigger ones. You may not think it's a lot, but it's like 50 grams of protein if you eat like a single tuna packet, like a big one. That's as much as like a chicken breast or something, you know. And it's just better for my body, so that's why I do it. Not everybody's going to agree with that. Tuna can be kind of... A lot of people don't like tuna because of mercury and stuff, because it's a bigger fish. They have like high mercury counts and junk. But I'm all about the kind of fat, I guess, that I put in my body is important for my body. This is kind of irrelevant, though. You know, I'm just talking. I was waiting to see what would happen. Yeah, AMC really just blew right through that level, and we figured it was going to be violent if it did. So I'm disappointed, mildly disappointed. It didn't hold. You know, of all the times we've come through this level recently, this is probably the better. We spent longer up here than we did in the previous push-ups, so there's less volume, but it is a heavy volume top. It's not looking great right now. Yeah, it's looking like that sell-off is imminent. This was probably I don't want to say it's an upthrust. That makes people panic. It is a push-up and test of resistance up here against this kind of downward creek. Not much of a creek, to be honest, but it is there. We didn't go over the buying climax. That's good, because then we're not like pushing in a way that we're unhealthy, you know, like we have to push above and then we have to deal with the fact that could be an upthrust. I don't think that's the case here. I think what we've done is we've created like a wave out above, and that's important. So like we're talking about these ascending accumulations. Don't forget the way this built out was really good. Every time it laid up here, it jumped over, it jumped over, it jumped over, it jumped over. It's fine. This is like a right side. It's a rising accumulation. Should have some kind of a pullback. There's no panic in my voice because I really don't think this is a big deal. Like in terms of moves, it was kind of predictable in a lot of ways. I felt like there was going to be this downward push. I said it yesterday, say it again now. Like I said it earlier in the stream too. We were talking about the ascending move with the backup, you know. And AMC tends to have pretty violent backups when it backs up. So I don't know. GME may end up holding up a little bit better than AMC does on the big picture. I think I deleted it. I guess I deleted it already. But I would expect there to be, after this parabolic move, a backup to some creek or a backup to some support. So for AMC, frustrating as it is that we didn't hold 548, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think that what we'll probably end up seeing is some kind of a distributive action. I'm just going to guess. I'm not positive, but I'm guessing much like we saw over here, we'll probably see something kind of similar. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but maybe some kind of a sideways here action that would break you out of like a local trend up. I have to go look and see where it is. Usually there's like a final trend that you break. There's a lot of them here, so I'm not sure which one to pick. Parabolas are like that, you know, there's a ton of like tangents. Maybe this guy coming up. So my expectation would be there'd be some kind of a bounce, and then you would end up sort of chopping sideways until probably like midday Thursday. I know it sounds weird. Seems like maybe be faster than that. It could be faster. It depends on how quickly this goes, I suppose. So get a little bit of a head and shoulder action right here on 550. And look, hey, it comes back above 550, no harm, no foul, right? We talked about the what happened on like GME. It looked really different. It was more like this, right, where it's just like this really strong push out. That stuff happens, so it's not a one size fits all. I'm just thinking like in terms of what AMC usually does, we would get some kind of a secondary pushback up. We would reject perhaps off of this top and then probably drop low. I'm still thinking it maybe doesn't go below 532. I feel like it's a debatable thing, but I feel like that might be the case. I really don't want to see an upthrust that just slides all the way down through this range now. I think that would be pretty bad. So I'd like to see some kind of a support and build out here. And man, I don't know. It's weird though. I know there's an intersection there that we could hit. It'd be a strange thing to do, but it might be what we need. Let's check this chart real quick. I'm curious what this looks like. This is kind of what I was thinking here. So it came higher. I thought maybe we'd come down lower to like 532. So it's the same thing. Same 532. Yeah, I've heard people talk about the carnivore diet. He's not a sensei, he's just an instructor. A sensei is Japanese, but like he's just my instructor, but he does the carnivore diet and he's lost a lot of weight. His blood pressure is really good. Things like that. It's great if your body can handle it. My body would probably not handle it well. So I have a genetic synthesization problem with high cholesterol. So that's a problem. And it's not the good cholesterol. It's my body holds on and synthesizes too much of the bad cholesterol. So I would clog up my arteries and die if I did the carnivore diet. Yeah. So it's not for everybody, you know. I would be dead in like the next 15 years probably if I did that. So I'm not going to do that. And again, like I have a friend who he's my instructor. He does it and he's very, very healthy. There's a lot of like myth out there about food and there's a lot of things that people believe that aren't really true, but I believe my own blood work, you know. So if my own blood work says, hey, I've got a problem, and then I did a fancy test. I just sent off to some lab across the country to check something out that was a genetic testing. They just started doing that like a little over a decade ago, but it was very strong, and I knew it was a problem for my mom, so I kind of suspected there might be an issue because I was healthy as fit as you could be, but I kept getting bad cholesterol results, and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't really eat that bad. Yeah. But my mom was like, she's like, I don't know. I've always had high cholesterol, and she's another person. I'm like, well, she's super fit. She eats like garden veggies, and I mean, she's just like it's not somebody that you look at and be like, that person has high cholesterol. And it turns out we've got a genetic problem, our blood, our body. So as things advance, you kind of learn more about yourself, and we'll see. They tried to put me on a statin, but I don't like that stuff. I feel like it's not tested enough. So I decided not to do that after a while. There's a lot of weird side effects for people that are older that have been on statins for a long time, for like 30 to 40 years. They're starting to see like strange things happening. Like people become like pre-diabetic and all this other stuff. It's like weird because it changes anything that you put in your body that changes your body. It should be tested for a long time. And there's some things about those statins I just don't trust them. I know they help people, so I can't say they're all bad, but let's keep going on this. Yeah. So look, right where we are right now, this is good. Where we are right now, if you look at where we've moved, coming back down to 533 would be a golden pocket retracement. So like right now we're at the 0.5, so we could bounce here at 540. That's a possibility. And then below us, we've got the 618 and 65, which a lot of folks consider to be the golden pocket. So like we're in a good spot right now, like to bounce and head low if we needed to do that. I don't feel bad about it. I feel like this is a really good place to be. If we come low and we make the right kind of bottom here, I'm going to be super, super bullish. Like I think we're going to have the magnificent run. So yeah, I agree with you guys about sugar. Yep. Well, eggs are fine. Eggs have good cholesterol. They're high in like the better cholesterols that your body uses, so. I think protein is the miracle, nutrient, and for a lot of folks. And then I forget what they call them, the amino acids, like the key amino acids. Those are really important for your body to function well. They basically find that as long as you're getting those things, usually you're doing fine. So people have different ways of getting those into their body. So that's the difference between the diets. It's strange though because like what works for one person doesn't work for anyone else, or whatever. It doesn't work for everybody. Rather, so I didn't mean anyone else. I meant it just doesn't work for everybody. There was there's a huge backlash against like carbs and stuff too, but I've never really had any issues with carbohydrates, and how in terms of like lethargy and other things like that. And I make my own bread and stuff now, and I think a lot of it has to do with just over processed. If you learn what went into making flour the way we make flour now, it's really weird. Most of it comes from the Industrial Revolution, and you start learning about stuff and you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is part of the problem, because suddenly like something that was a staple food for humanity, now people have all kinds of allergies to it, and it's just interesting. I like talking about food because it's one of those things that like everybody has an opinion on it. Everybody has their own experience, and food is amazing, in terms of like cultures and how it affects cultures and what it's done for people, and there's just so much good stuff to talk about with food. Food's an easy one. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about stocks. So I'm trying to balance it. Right now, I'm just kind of watching to see what happens. It's bizarre. I drew it that way earlier, and I didn't kind of expect it to go that way. But I drew it like downward, like first thing this morning. And I was saying like maybe it comes low and then like breaks down here. I kind of did that, but it went a little bit early. So we're out now. We've kind of waved out here. So it did happen. It just happened really low, really low. So like, this is the creek crosses, and then you're out. So the one thing you can't always predict is if you don't have a strong sense of like where that bottom should be, sometimes it can be a bit challenging. And it looks like we hit the trend that I drew earlier. So what this trend is, let me see if I can make it bigger for you. What this trend is basically like I took a trend from the top because I'm assuming that this is some kind of a channel. I took this trend from the double top here and I put it down bottom. And I basically measured it from like the top of that gap, or the bottom of the gap rather, and it lines up. So I was like, I'll leave it there. So that's where I've left it. So right now it's still acting as a trend support. And then we talked about coming low to like the 2840s. That's a high liquid mark here locally. So it's the highest traded area locally. So for now, this has provided some kind of a bottom. And that tells me that, again, like I might be on the right track in terms of general support, that I've got it in the right spot here. I marked off for 2844 earlier, but I said I'd really prefer to stay above 2860. I'll say that quite frequently. I'll mark off like a lower mark, and then I'll say I really prefer to stay above this, because one of them signifies kind of an early buy-in that's a little stronger. The other one might be like a last-ditch kind of support. I don't know if this is going to hold, to be honest. I would not be surprised if, I know I've got it going up, but I would not be surprised if this chops. I don't know how exactly this could happen, but if it chops like almost to the end of the day and then drops later, that kind of stuff happens quite often in this market, and I hope that doesn't happen to GME. You know, it could be a lot like what we saw yesterday, where this is just the first sell-off and then it's going to advance and continue, and that's kind of what I want to see. That'd be the best, you know, for me. I'd be like, yay, you know, we're going up. But if this does happen, it's important to note, again, like, this is not the end-all be-all. Like, this is a setup that would get you back to some other bottoming action, more than likely. So back here, you could have a drop down to as low as 26, you know, and it'd still be pretty good shape. And just to argue that point further, you can see, like, I know it's hard to see on my charts because my charts are kind of messy. I recognize that. But if you can, squint your eyes. No, there's actually a channel here. So this went parabolic out of a channel. And the channel is this pink guy that I've got drawn out. And oftentimes what we see is during this pullback, if there's a sudden leap, and that's what happened right here around 27, look at that as a possible intersection, because again, it's like a triangulation of like, here's a liquidity zone that we didn't trade much in. You would be able to hold this channel. Ultimately, you're not breaking below any major creeks. It's a really safe place to have a backup if you need to. My preference, which I've already kind of stated multiple times, would be to stay above this little purple region, which goes from 2770 up to 2830. That's my preference, because I think that would be a little bit stronger. But I don't particularly care if, I know you guys are like, well, I don't see why you wouldn't care. Well, I do care, but it's like I wouldn't particularly care if it came like lower, like down to here. As long as it doesn't break super low, I think it would be good. Yeah, Hazel, it's not Friday yet. I'm looking at Friday into Monday. I don't know if it's going to be Friday or Monday, but both of those are high probability target dates for some kind of a rise because of intersections, and timing builds out really clean to here on Friday. So up at like 7:55 on Friday. Now, it's difference between minutes. So if you think about trading time, like trading hours, you know, it can be a significant. There's a significant difference between Friday and Monday, I guess, for options. But in terms of like trading hours and time for trading, there's like no difference. I mean, it would be the difference of like a minute. So you have to remember that, because I always think about how if I'm trying to squash options, I may not let it run. If I'm a bull operator, running on a Friday can be really strong, but we've seen no real need to do that historically. Like, we can't really argue that that's a necessary part of this. The last time we ran, we went down into a Friday, the big run in May, and we settled into a Friday and then just gapped up and ripped on Monday. And so I don't really see a strong case that it has to somehow create some massive gamma ramp or something or whatever on a Friday. But that being said, this is timed out. It's literally like 30 minutes before close on Friday. That's the best I could give you. There was a secondary target on Tuesday. Not all these targets get met, so grain of salt. But there is a presence of a very strong probability target, in my opinion, going into Monday. So maybe Friday, maybe Monday. See you in October. You keep saying that, but you're still here. This is Glenn. I'm getting kind of annoyed. Oh my gosh. All right. See you in October, Glenn. If I say that, will you? Glenn, you said it wasn't going to come back above 5 till October. I'm messing with you too, but I'm also not messing, because maybe it's someone pretending to be Glenn Miller. I don't know. I don't know. I don't dislike Glenn. I have nothing personal against him. Yeah, I see some debate about. Oh, well, I thought Glenn Miller's name had one N, but okay. So in your time that you do have, do it the best that you can. But the only real major prediction lately that didn't happen was that early July run, and I've owned up to that and said that I feel like I don't want to make any excuses, so I'm not going to try to make excuses. There was a strong chance that was a possibility, and I still think there was a strong chance. I don't believe that any trajectory has to be met, though. So, like, that's the difference between maybe me saying something as highly probable versus something that does or doesn't happen. And there's a lot of people out there on the internets that will go out and say, like, this is definitely going to happen. Like, we're going to have this huge move. It has to be here. And I'm like, I'm always surprised if that move happens, even if I think it was going to happen. I'm always like, wow, I can't believe that happened. Like it really did happen, because it's a cumulative data effort. You're always trying to get a general sense of direction, and you're also trying to get a general sense of timing. And timing's the tricky one. You might get targets, and there might be a very clear directional move from a bull standpoint to hit certain targets. That doesn't mean that they're going to win. It's a competition of wills, and we don't know why that target was generated, all the time. It could have been that there was an operator who wanted, and they got out of the play, and then this or that. Like, there's so many weird little excuses that people could make and I could make. But at the end of the day, instead of saying this or this, I would just say maybe. Like maybe. This seems like a strong maybe to me. I deal in probability in the market, and I've done quite well with that. I don't try to deal in absolutes with this kind of stuff. Like it has to do this or it has to do that. I look at the way it's moving now. Does it have a change of character? And I hate to keep going back to the same points, but I'm going to defend myself in this regard, okay? Because I had a lot of people asking me on like Monday the 8th going into that Wednesday, which, by the way, like we got up here, first of all. So like, I don't want to beat myself up and say like, well, I can't do anything because I make one error. You know, that's not true. That's just not true. Did I make a mistake with timing? Yes. Did I get everything wrong? No. Like, if you had managed to trade from 434 up to 572, I gave every single target we hit, and we hit them on time. The issue was that I don't know how long I had it on my chart. I took it off like yesterday, but I had 532 as a danger zone on my chart from the very beginning. And I knew that when we got up here, we were going to have to watch it closely because there's a possibility it doesn't advance here. And I kept saying the same thing. The issue isn't that I don't say it. The issue is that people don't hear it. And that's two different things, right? So like I'll say something on a stream, but there's only like 50 to 60 people in here. And I'll say it repeatedly to the same 50 or 60 people. But it's the other like 40 to 50 people who maybe don't come in every day or who don't hear it, you know, and it's like, unless I'm constantly repeating myself, which I do a lot for this reason, it's like constantly repeat yourself, then those people are not going to hear it. And then they come back and they're like, I don't get it. What happened? And I'm like, well, it changed. You know, we had a danger zone at 532. It's been on my chart for months, you know, for a while, ever since we started coming down. Maybe not months, but a month. And I'm looking at it like this is a possible place to stop. When we got here, in my own defense, I sat here for 3 days arguing with bulls that this was not bullish. Go back and listen to the streams. And that Monday at close, we had an upthrust through 548 that I did not like. And I said, there's really no way to interpret this except bearish, but it didn't break low. And then every day after that, I sat here saying, it looks like a change of character. It looks like it's not going to go. It looks like it's not going to go. But people kept coming in saying, well, do you still think it's going to run to 15? You still think it's going to do this? I'm like, why are you asking me that? I'm literally sitting here saying very clearly, and this is me defending myself, okay? I'm not being defensive. I know you guys are like, Booksy, so sensitive. I'm a sensitive guy. I am. I have a high emotional sensitivity. But like, I also feel that like it's appropriate at times to just sort of say it because I feel like it doesn't get said enough. Like things can change. Change is a constant factor in the market. It's a lurking variable. And if you don't see it happen, it's not because some random person got it wrong. Some person on the internet got it wrong that you lost money or that you didn't pay attention. Like you got to pay attention to your own positions. I find it to be very like, the word childish sounds very condescending, but like it's a lack of responsibility and respect for yourself. Like you need to have respect for yourself and responsibility for yourself when you trade. You have to make the decision, where do I get out of this if it breaks down? If this person that says something is highly probable changes their mind, maybe I should at least be willing to change my mind and then not hold it against them because they changed their mind. Because I didn't change my tune until these few days. I was very optimistic because we had hit every target. We were making the moves. As soon as this hits the top, I'm like, well, there is this thing that happens, and I start talking about the widening, and I start talking about the 1, 2, 3 layup, and I start talking about how sometimes it builds out farther on the right side, and sometimes it takes a lot longer because of this or that. That's what started looking like it was happening. I let everybody know. I'm not sitting around whining and trying to defend myself here. I'm saying that I think I made the right ethical decision to change my mind. And I don't think it's fair if people come in, they're mad or upset because they're like, well, I don't get it. It changed. And I'm like, look, all I can do is say what I think is happening. And if it doesn't do what I think it's going to do early on, like I made predictions like weeks before, right? And then when you get there, you're like, okay, how does it look? Hey, guess what? It changed. That's the best I can do. That's the best I can do. I can't do any better than that. It's not possible. And somebody that can do better than that, I don't know what they're doing. Like they have insider information or something. Like most people don't trade that way. They don't try to make these huge broad brush predictions. They try their best to get guidance about direction, and then they look at the price action. And so the best way to look at a YouTuber is to look at it as guidance about direction, and then you need to still be willing to do the price action work. If you don't have enough time to learn like the basics of the market, I can't tell you what to do with your money. I can't. But I would advise you don't trade. If I could advise you, I would say don't trade. Because if you can't be attentive and at least have the basic knowledge of like a stop loss or a trigger or an alert, like you can't even put an alert on your chart when it goes the direction you don't want it to go, do not trade. You're going to just lose money. You might as well throw money down the toilet because the market is going to make big swings. You have to know what your threshold is for pain in the market. You have to know what your threshold is for loss. That's my lecture on it. I'm going to stop lecturing you, but I've adapted like to the changes that needed to be made. I lost some money here and there too. Like I told you guys, I got out of a $6 callback here because it didn't look good, but yet there's still people who are convinced that it had to go up and they're still waiting for it. And I'm like, look, I can't tell you what to do, but I'm telling you what I did and I got out. I took an L. I took a loss here and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I think it's going to take a lot longer. I was very vocal about that. So like, you do what you want to do, but if something changes, I'm going to tell you. And I'm not going to I even apologize. I felt horrible about it, but that's it. Like that's as much as I can do, So I'm telling you right now, like this is the way I'm interpreting this range. It doesn't look bad to me. It looks okay. It reminds me of the right side. Usually when we have a cross of a creek, there's a buy up that happens. Then you have some kind of consolidation and pullback. That's why I have all these little downward movements on my chart, because yesterday we were talking through it and I said, look, usually there's some kind of, after a peak, there's some kind of a buy back down. There's some kind of a sell back down. It's a walk down to some liquidity level. I would say at this point, 530s to me look pretty likely. That would be a logical place to have it happen. The other part was this gap that was left. That's really low. It is. But I think it could play as like a spring action in this range, potentially. Okay, and there's a really significantly low possibilities, but those are not here yet. And we're not looking at that right this second. So that's as much as I could say. And just consolidation is, fine. It's not a big deal. When stuff breaks down, I'll let you know. Or if the consolidation looks unhealthy, I'll let you know. But I understand there's people who they just can't do it. They can't tune in. They don't listen. It's a burden. But if that's you and you keep losing money, like, I can't tell you what to do with your money, but I guess as a quiet, friendly voice, I would just say maybe this isn't the best thing for you to be doing, because there's some folks that really want to just kind of make the money on the side, and it's fine to think that. But I'll tell you, I tried to do it for a while. This is why I stopped trading after a while, because I had another job, and I tried to keep trading. And that's when I started losing big, because I couldn't keep up with it. And I realized that my trading plan was one that was very active. And without that, I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a passive trading plan. I had an active trading plan. So you either get a different trading plan and you learn a new way to trade, or you stop trading. So when I stopped trading a while ago, this was a long time ago, now I took a big break because I was like, I can't trade with this strategy. I was actively like day trading. You can't do that if you're working another job. It just doesn't work, you know. You'd have to swing longer term positions, you know. You need a more passive way of trading. So I don't know, man. When people trade options and they lose money on options, I'm always like, what's your trading plan? Like, what's your strategy? Are you trying to day trade when you really can't day trade very well? It could just be a matter of position in life. Like, you're just not in a good place in life right now where this is a good option for you. Don't trade options if you can't, because they die on you. They have theta decay. Don't trade them if you can't monitor them, you know, if you can't be willing to take the loss. So I'm probably preaching to the choir at this point. I think all the people that didn't want to hear it just left. So that's always a positive. And it's getting to a lull in the day, so that's another thing. But hopefully you guys hear it as a wise word and not just a condescension. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm really not. I don't have any right to tell you what to do with your money or anything like that. But I just think that I get concerned because I hear people are like, well, I'm waiting for this, you know, this $6 call and it doesn't hit, I'm screwed. And I'm like, well, why are you in that call, you know, like, and why didn't you get out when it spiked to 560? you know, like what's driving you to that it has to get at a certain place, you know, or and why do you think it's not possible that this could come back down? I don't know. I don't know the answers. I see this kind of stuff and I'm like, phew, you know, like just doesn't make sense to me. And unfortunately, if you try to talk to people about it, they just get ticked off. You know, they think you're being a jerk, and you're like, well, someone's got to talk to you about it at some point because you got a problem. You keep buying into these ridiculous call options and losing money on it, and you're not prepared. But you don't want to take it, you know, just kind of a sound, gentle word from somebody who's trying to prevent you from taking those losses. No one's trying to bully you here, you know. We're just trying to like give you a piece of advice about mitigating losses. Anyways, I digress. Let's get back to charting. Because again, I don't want to be accused of like lecturing people, or this one that people come out and start saying like you're being like a soapbox or something. It's like, dude, yeah, Hazel, there's a yeah, wasted memories. Sorry, I'm reading back through here. You might be fine if you learn how to play options in a way that just keeps you from losing a bunch. Because losing like 5K is a lot, but I mean, I've lost more than that. I mean, I gained like, what was it? I mean, I must have been like gained and lost like 30,000 one week or something. I mean, it was just crazy, you know. But you have to take those. It was like it ended up being like a scratch for me, but I gained so much on this big trade, and then I lost it all, thinking that it was going to continue. And you just really have to learn how to take the profits that you have and protect them. And then that's one thing, is protect the profits you do make. Like, don't just reinvest immediately. Just take a deep breath, because you're not going to miss out on every run, you know? It would have been really easy for me to take all those profits in IWM and put them back into IWM. I got out at 218. If I had put them right back into IWM the next day, yes, would I have made some money potentially? Possibly. But if I'm waiting for 227 and it doesn't hit, and then it starts turning back down, I could get really screwed really fast. So I'm not saying like it always is the same in every situation, but it's good to just like take a breath. Like, after you've taken your profits, just pause. Just do nothing. Do nothing. Don't try to roll it into something else. Just let the account settle. Let it just sit. You know, if you sit on it for a week, I know you're like, well, I might miss a big run. You might. But if you just sit on it, it really helps. It really helps. Because what you were talking about there, and I'm not trying to be like a therapist for you, but what you're talking about there sounds like an impulsive behavior, which is not something that I'm unfamiliar with. I'm totally familiar with it. Where you have kind of a knee-jerk reaction to something, and so you immediately do it, and you don't really think through the consequences of how it might end if it ends badly. Sometimes just take that deep breath, take that breather, and you'll protect a lot of profits. And then the other thing is just know where your threshold is for loss. If you're not comfortable taking small losses, then you need to figure out a way to get comfortable taking small losses. Make sense? Like, you got to be willing to take the smaller loss. You just do. And with options, that's almost non-negotiable. Either you scratch or you take the small loss, but you have to be willing to do that. It's far better to lose a couple $100 than to lose a few $1,000, right? And it may stink because you think that you get into this mentality thinking that you just got to hold on a little longer. But I'll tell you, man, until I got a little bit better with TA, and I'm still learning, I would do that and I would get screwed. Like, I would think that it's going to turn back around, and it just doesn't. You just have to know, like, this is not the time to debate it. Just do it. And then if you need to re-enter, you can re-enter later, you know. But those are the two probably biggest money saving strategies that I've developed. So after you take profits, just take a deep breath. Don't do anything with it. Don't try to like turn it into $1 million in like one day. There's people that do that, but most people, they end up just losing it all. And then, you know, be willing to take the small loss instead of the big one to protect yourself from the big one. Don't focus on what you might regret. That's a good way to get yourself into that. It's really a fake mindset, because you're trying to like fortune tell. And you're like, well, if I get out now, it's going to run and I'm going to miss out on all of this stuff. Yeah, maybe. Or maybe if you get out now, you'll avoid like a huge loss, you know. It's just the way we justify things in our brain can be pretty backwards. So I'm telling you from experience, not talking down to you. I'm telling you because I've been there. So just keep in mind those two things. I think you'll do a lot better. You can play options. It's just another thing that's helpful is just start small and focus on the percentage, not the money. Focus on the percentage gain. Like 100% trade, even if you only made like $100, is a great trade. Wonderful trade. Amazing trade. Anytime you can make like 100% or something like that, or even like 60 or 30% on a trade, great trade. Most swing traders that just do shares, they look for like 6 to 10%. Like they're not making huge numbers. So for options to make a 30 to 60% is pretty good. And then, I mean, it's good. It's not bad. Making 100+% on an options trade is great. Even if you don't make a lot. And you should use it as a way of encouraging yourself to be consistent. Like, hey, I made that 100% trade. I didn't make much, but because I didn't have a lot in it, I only had like one contract or something, but I made 100% on that trade. What did I do right? When did I enter? Okay. And then you can kind of up the risk factor as you go. It's like a snowball. Those are suggestions. You guys are like, he's giving you financial advice, sue him. Yeah. I just think that's what's worked for me. So I do far better when I'm encouraging myself and not constantly beating on myself for messing up a trade here or there. And I'm wondering what MPW is going to do, if it's going to hold. Lately, I've been getting off at like noon, and I've been missing the bigger price actions of the day. Like we've been settling down, and then sometime around like noon, we end up having some big run, but feeling triggered right now. You're funny. If you're really Glenn Miller, this is the time that you'd say, gotta go, I gotta meet some clients today. See you guys later. Love you. And then you'd leave. Because he usually comes in the morning and then leaves. I don't know what he does, but clients, who knows what that means. Could mean anything. Yeah, man, I'm pretty happy with this. I'm not gonna draw any kind of lines on this IWM move just yet. So right now, IWM is held above 222. It's red on the day, but, you know, I will have to go look at it closer to see what's going on here. I think this might be a buying climax, and we may finally start seeing a top. Good news, last time we did this on the other side of the S-curve, I mentioned this yesterday, right here, when IWM kind of finally hit its buying climax and then started settling out. It did end up going higher, but it was kind of like at the top of where it was going to go. This is right when AMC and GME moved, so they actually did not go with IWM at all for several days. I mean, you can see it on the chart. IWM really starts moving out kind of on April 19th, but ultimately it's like May 1st. Now, arguably, there is some stuff going on with AMC and GME from May 1st until May 13th. There's plenty of stuff that's going on. You could say like, hey man, it was totally setting up for a run. I know that. All right, I'm not saying that. There is upside. There is a setup that's going on. But in terms of like the main bulk of this move was like, I don't know, like 60% done. Yeah, this is at this is like 80% finished on IWM. This move up was like 80% complete. And that's when all of a sudden, you know, your meme stocks, AMC and GME, have this massive 300% 2-day period. So like, I'm not rooting for for IWM to crash or something, but I do think that it's got a potential for pullback. And I'm curious if it starts leveling off a little bit, if we don't get that as kind of a catalyst of sorts for maybe for AMC and GME, perhaps. What happens if GME drops below 28? 27.72, and then I mean there's a couple supports. So one's at 27.72, the next is down here at 27.36, and then the next one is down at the gap at 26.80. any of those could provide support. So there's not a, if I had to pick one that I thought was most likely, I would say between 2770 and 2830, because I think that's a strong place to get some buyback in. But frankly, looking at the liquidity here, it would not surprise me if we came down low and hovered around 27, low 27s. So I know there's a lot of low blocks on my chart, but these are kind of the regions I would look at, these three regions right here. And I think that any of those are likely candidates. Part of me thinks we'd probably hit here and go sideways and not actually come down very much. Or if we did, it would just be to sort of tempt the gap or get the gap and then come back up. But this is neither here nor there yet. We haven't finished the day. We'll see what happens. There's still a possibility with this jump over the creek that we could have a second advancement today. It's not out of the realm of possibility. You just need to see a concise move over 29, basically. And we could see it have a second run today. Maybe in the noontime hours, we see something like that. Let me see how high this went. This went up to 2907, and this is at 2907. So we do have a double top at 2907 today. This has actually happened quite a bit lately. There was a double top yesterday, I think, as well. This was at 2811, 2810, pretty close. So usually what's happened is that if we do get kind of a double top, this is another one where it had like a massive kind of topping action. We've been dipping low. Same here. There's a lot of double tops. I'm dipping back down to see if we need to go low. Some of them, I mean, lately they've all recovered, but sometimes that won't be the case. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on it as it approaches lows here. So if it can make another bottom, we might see it advance later in the day. We will see. I don't have any kind of super strong opinion at this time because I'm favoring a pullback, but I know that some people don't want to see that. So, and that wasn't on their agenda for today. They were like, we got to run, and I'm like, okay. There's a prophecy, and I'm like, okay. 25 is max pain. I mean, do you think there's a path to 25? Because if you think there's a path to 25, then maybe there's a path to 25. There's gaps down here near 25. I mean, that might be part of it, is folks thinking that there's a path to 25. I think a lot of it might have to do with just this being a topping area. Like, there's a lot of topping that's been going on here. Like, we've had RSI divergences on these two peaks. We've had RSI getting overblown on higher time frames already. I mentioned these things as a kind of a bearish warning for folks that, like, there's issues here, issues that could potentially dump the stock. It's been going parabolic. So I think the idea of a retracement down to 25 probably seems likely to a lot of folks, like highly probable, Like 25 is the golden pocket retracement on this move. So my thoughts on it are just that I think it's a possibility that wouldn't necessarily be great, but it could happen. If you're looking at this like you looked at AMC, you'd probably think this is like a head and shoulder or something, and you'd expect this to be like a shoulder action down. I think it's possible. I would be disappointed if we didn't get to the edge here. I would be mildly disappointed. I didn't do it in extended hours either, so before you ask. I just would be kind of disappointed if we didn't reach that, but is it a possibility that it distributes and comes down? Sure. Sure, it's a possibility. You don't know until this finishes out. Like, if we have a pullback here, this could still end bearish if it drops, it does the wrong thing. Like if for example, on like a Thursday or Friday, if you get some kind of crazy distributive action, the concept of this dropping hard to 25 might seem outlandish to some folks, but I can see the path there to some degree, you know. I don't think it's likely we're going to make that full distance unless we seriously get going. But I'm also the opinion that this is probably like as low as we're going to need to go, maybe 26, you know. We were just talking about that. If you just drop straight down. At the end of the day, like, max pain is what it is. Maybe it gets met, maybe it doesn't. Right now, do I think that it's possible? Yeah, sure. It's not impossible. You know, that's a decent retracement. I mean, if you look at it like a creek cross, it could just be like a backup, you know. Maybe back up before takeoff. It's just like a deeper version of what we already have drawn. I don't think it's the best idea to come above 28 and then in 2770 and then drop below it. That's not what I want to see happen. But if we did drop below, I want to see it recover here, and that's what I've been talking about. It's like maybe we can get a dip down and then just recover. You know, that could happen low or high. But it's not impossible that this breaks down. But it ain't going to be Friday. You know, it's going to happen over the next day and a half. So you're going to have signs. I don't think Friday you're just going to dump like 20% or something in one day. I guess it's like a 15% move. Lately, GME's been kind of beating max pain pretty consistently. So, you know, when we look at stuff like that, it's like, do I think that it could beat max pain again? Sure. I feel like max pain's been consistently low almost every week. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've been seeing. What's going on with charge point? I don't know. Clove has taken off, but it hasn't really made any kind of definitive SOS yet. So this is the SOS region. This is definitely an SOS. That's not what I mean. It's like more than likely an SOS. Because it went from spring all the way to the top. I think it's an SOS. So if it holds here, and I'm not looking at a micro time frame, but if Clove holds above this like 158 area, I think it's good to go. This is where you could also have like a backup. So we talked about backups to the creek and where that might go. And I think this is a likely candidate because of an underlying kind of belly here, like right there. This is a likely candidate for a potential backup, maybe a little bit higher. That's about as far as I would want to see it go. And I said in theory, if it didn't go above the top, it could come back down. But this actually went above the top already. So I don't think it should go all the way back down. Since it already went above the top, you don't want to see that. So Clove's in a good spot for potential just backup with some buy-in. What if it just runs? Well, then it runs, you know. Not everything happens exactly the way I think it's going to happen. This is the same kind of story with charge point. It's no different. So it had a turn here, and it made a higher low, and then it's advancing again. It went to a place where it advanced above the first wave here, so it's in an SOS as well. Pushed high here, went up to 245. You can see that's above the top. So at this point, it's trying to make an advancement. I don't particularly like the way this candle looks on the weekly, but we'll see. It's not over yet. So we'll see. I don't like that it opened and closed way below, but below 221 is kind of strange. I got rid of it on my chart, but I had it on there for a while. I don't know. Every time I get rid of something, it seems to matter like the next day. You know, it's like I'll get rid of it, and then the next day, it's like, why did I get rid of that? I don't know. But I had this thing on my chart for a while that we might do like an SOS with a backup here. I think I had it drawn like this way, but maybe it was a little earlier, like this or something. I don't know. I still think that 194 is a possible place to back up to, so I don't particularly see this as overtly negative. Right now, it looks to me like it's just a healthy retracement at this point. And it may not go this low, but there's other places. It could stop at 205, for example, you know, come back to like 205 and bounce there. These are just suggestions, but I think that that would be a very healthy place to take a breather. It has a big, gigantic wave here and here. It seems like pretty even. So may need to take a breather before another push up. Yeah, I don't know why I deleted that red thing. I was on my chart for a long time, but it basically I was saying like I thought it would come up, make an SOS, and come back a bit. So this should be the backup. Again, pretty normal. It's not fun to watch it drop 30 cents when the stock's so low, but because it looks like high percentage drops, and they are. But like in the grand scheme of things, like you have to just look at the big picture. Like this is an important level to find a support at right here. And you can see why. This has been supply for a long time. So we just need to find a support, and then it should continue. There it is. There it is. This is going pretty fast. Real fast. Well, at least it's interesting today. Went from being really green to like really red. My viewership went from over 100 to 55. People really don't like bearish booksy. Look, I'm not a fan of that high volume top. I told you guys earlier in the day, like it just looked weird. It didn't look great. It doesn't mean it's completely and totally busted. It just, at this point, we really need to see a strong bottom with continuation. There are some things that could change my mind about AMC, and this is getting to that point where it's like you don't want to push it. But I'll say this, it did come above, in my opinion, where the supply zone is. It didn't hold it at 548. It's the closest we've ever come to holding it, but it didn't really hold it. So right now it's still acting like a supply dump. And that's not the best place to be. But all things considered, you know, if I see it pull back here and bounce out, I'm going to be pretty bullish on it. I'd love to see this kind of, I saw somebody said double bottom earlier. I actually think that's probably a good way to put it. See this kind of like bounce out that then sort of comes back low and tries again. This would be wonderful, like something like that. That would be really, really good. I'll just kind of doodle it a different way. But yeah, this to me would be really positive. Something like that could be really, really good. And it may last longer than I've drawn it. But this could be a really positive way of hitting a bottom here around 530s. So if I saw that, I'd be pretty happy overall with the price movement. Like anything in the market, I could be wrong and end up being a bust, but that to me would look mostly really good. I would see that as a very bullish action. So some kind of a new buy-in here with a drop, and then another buy-in here with a drop. This would be really good. I think it could result in a big move. We'll see. Let's look a little closer at GME real quick. Feeling kind of burned out now. Yeah. I don't know. It's double topped here at 2907, so somebody built a bit of a wall there. Buyers haven't had much of an amazing wall, but there seems to be an effort to try to keep it above this previous range, which is fine. I think it's lost the trend, the local, really local trend here. So maybe at lowest you could draw another one down here, since this is technically like the bottom. It's not really the gap, but for what it's worth, I think it's basically out of it. Maybe you can move it down a bit. I don't know. That's totally up to you. If you think that it should be down there, go for it. Maybe there's a little bit more of a low. I still would want to keep it over 28.28 if possible. GME is holding up a bit better than AMC right now, clearly. AMC is taking like a nosedive. So if both of them are going towards liquidity bottoms, maybe that's a good sign. Maybe GME is not going to go down as far. It still wouldn't put it past GME to come down low, so just keep that in mind. Hard to say where exactly that might be, but usually I look at my M shapes in the middle, so I think it's right here maybe. I know I'm adding more lines. You guys are like, wonderful. It was already hard to see on this chart. But this is kind of where I would put it, just between the two peaks. There's this M in the middle. I would just look at that top and bottom and kind of average them. And I would say that's a likely place to kind of try to find some kind of a bottom here. So I don't know, it's starting to look like this guy might have actually been a decent prediction. This first draw out that I made. I mean, obviously it's sooner, but it's pretty close. I hate that it didn't go up all the way, though. That bothers me a lot. We'll see. I still think, I know it sounds weird, but I still think it's possible that this could build out late in the day. I know it's just the way that this is going. It hasn't really made any definitive action yet. So you might see it like do like a spring here, and then if it happens, you could build out into the end of the day. I don't know what just happened there. That was weird. You could see it advance one more time, you know. Like, so I'm just gonna kind of have to wait. That might be an after lunch kind of thing, where we need to see what's happening and come back and see if it's stronger than when we left it. Right now, I'm feeling it out, and yeah, I agree. There's mostly sell off and sideways now, and I think we're looking for AMC to be at that 530 level, and it makes sense to me, you know, to be in this little pocket here. So yeah, I think it's fine. I'm gonna keep this one on this chart though. I need this line. I don't really want a super strong rejection here on MPW, but honestly, it's pretty overbought. And every time it keeps coming up here, it's been correcting, which is good on the hourly. Yeah, we're kind of peeking into overbought territory now on the 4 hour. I wouldn't be surprised if we see kind of a corrective move, a bigger corrective move here on MPW. The follow through on that would sort of make sense if this can like reset, and it resets much higher. That would be really positive. So it probably doesn't have to be this low. It could be like just finding support on the bottom before 471, I guess. Maybe 475. That could work. We'll see. I'd like for it to hit 483 instead, but we'll see. Either one of those is okay. Yep. Everything red. Going red. Look at that, man. 1, 2, 3, 4. I knew it looked like a 4 top. I figured it was going to happen, man. Just a matter of time. I'm kind of relieved, to be honest. I really am. Look how close it got to that top, too. It was so close to 227, man. These levels were really good. Just my anticipation of that going that far. I couldn't believe it went that far. If we start breaking down, this is a weird looking top. I don't know what this is. Maybe it's not a top. I don't know what this is right now. I would just watch this lower trend on IWM, and then if we break through that, probably going to come back down pretty low. I really think we'll hit 218 if we start selling off hard. I don't know about coming all the way back to 210 right away. It feels like in order to do that, you'd have to create some kind of a larger top. You couldn't just go like straight up and straight back down. That seems very unlikely. I know it happens, but I would imagine you would chop here a bit more, and just for a couple days even, and then drop. It's just strange if it went straight up and straight back down. That'd be really weird. So I'm not gonna see that as highly likely. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and go take my lunch break, and then I'll be back a couple hours. This looks good, actually. I know you guys don't like this kind of stuff, but this actually looks really interesting. Notice that this is like a really tight mechanical like walk down, but notice that it's already like jumped over. It doesn't look like it at first, but it's actually jumped over the creek already, like the local one. Y'all are like, you're crazy, dude. No, I think it's actually good because to me it looks like a really straightforward setup. Like, it's taking you right to wherever you need to go. I kind of like that. Prefer that kind of stuff to like messing around all day, you know? Up and down, up and down, up and down. Like, I'd rather just see the walk down, get to where you need to go, and then be done with it. Yeah, I like that. It's interesting. Well, we'll have fun with that later. I'll be back in a couple hours.